You know, there's something strangely powerful about a certain kind of person. They walk into a room and feel it all. The quiet discomfort between friends, the sadness tucked behind someone's polite smile, the small disharmony most never notice. We're told this is a gift, aren't we? The gift of sensitivity, of clear seeing. But what if it isn't a gift at all? At least not in the way we like to imagine. What if it's one of the most dangerous things you could ever possess? I'm not talking about physical danger here. Not the kind you can see or defend against. I'm speaking of something quieter, far more sneaky. The danger of seeing the truth so clearly that you can no longer participate in the easy make-believe that allow others to move through life calm. To see too deeply is to be forever changed by what you see. And sometimes, that change separates you from the easy rhythm of human belonging. Have you ever really watched people at a party? They're playing a game, one that everyone knows naturally, though no one ever explains the rules. Someone asks how you are. You say, fine. And both of you agree, silently, that this is a complete answer. Compliments are exchanged like currency. Laughter comes easily, not because something is funny, but because it's expected. The game works beautifully because it's designed to keep everyone on the surface, smiling, nodding, never looking too closely. But then there's you, the one who notices everything. You see the tiny flinch in the wife's shoulder when her husband interrupts her. You feel the heaviness behind a colleague's cheerful tone. You catch the flicker of discontent, the shadow of loneliness, the secret feeling of fear that hums beneath polite conversation. And once you start noticing these things, you can't stop. You can't unsee what's been seen. That's where the real danger begins, because your awareness becomes a mirror that others naturally avoid. You see, when you notice the hidden structure beneath social interactions, you break the silent agreement that keeps the pretense unbroken. You begin to notice the framework, the lies, the performances, the desperate attempts to maintain calmness, and people don't take kindly to that. Not because they're cruel or ignorant, but because your awareness threatens the fragile situation they depend on to feel safe. Think of society as a grand theater. Everyone is an actor, costumed in a role, the successful entrepreneur, the doting mother, the dependable friend. The play runs smoothly, so long as everyone stays in character. But the moment someone, you, stands up and points out that it's all a performance, the illusion cracks. The crowd turns, not with gratitude, but with fear and resentment. The first danger, then, is separation. Not the simple loneliness of missing company, but a far deeper distance. The being alone of living in a reality that no one else seems to be part of. You begin to speak a language others no longer understand, and the clearer your vision becomes, the farther you drift from the easy crowd of ordinary life. And it's here, standing outside that chorus, that the second danger begins to take shape. I once knew someone, let's call her Sarah, who had that same sharp vision. She could enter a room and instantly figure out the feeling climate beneath the small talk. She knew who was sincere and who was performing, who was quietly aching and who was pretending to be fine. It wasn't intuition or guesswork. It was as if her mind and heart were tuned to a deeper frequency, one that broadcast what others tried so hard to hide. And yet, this gift destroyed her peace. One by one, her relationships broke up, not because she was harsh or unkind, but because people felt exposed in her presence. Her friends said things like, "You're too intense," or "You read too much into everything." What they really meant was, "You see too much." They wanted her to dim the light of her awareness so they could remain comfortable in their own shadows. But she couldn't, because once you learn to see through the masks, you can't pretend they're real again. Telling her to stop noticing was like asking someone with perfect hearing to ignore sound. Awareness, once awakened, refuses to sleep again. And that's where the second danger emerges, the impossible choice between silence and truth. When you see what's real, you're forced to decide, do you speak or stay quiet? If you speak, you risk attack. Not in a physical sense, but in the subtle violence of social disapproval. You'll be called negative, sensitive, paranoid. You'll be accused of imagining problems that don't exist or of creating drama. But if you stay silent, if you swallow what you know and pretend not to notice, something inside you breaks. Each time you deny what you see, you lie to yourself about what you see. Slowly, you start to mistrust yourself. You begin to question whether you're the one who's mistaken, whether your insight is just imagination. This is a kind of quiet madness, the conflict of knowing the truth while pretending not to. I remember sitting in a meeting once, watching everyone congratulate themselves on a successful project that was clearly on the verge of collapse. The smiles were forced, the eyes avoiding, the tone tense. When I suggested we examine the cracks, the room turned on me, not with logic, but with fear of being wrong. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted the illusion to hold. And that's the third danger, blaming others. When others refuse to see what's real, they often direct their discomfort toward the one who does. Without realizing it, they cast you as the problem, the troublemaker, the pessimist, the unstable one. It's an automatic way to protect oneself. By saying what you see is wrong, they keep their false story alive. I call it shooting the messenger. The clearer your vision, the greater the threat you pose to those still invested in pretending. It's a clever mechanism, really. Society has 1,000 ways to silence its truth-tellers. You get labeled negative, overly analytical, or too emotional. But what all those labels really say is this: please stop making me see. It's not bad intent, it's fear. They can't bear the light you bring, because light reveals everything, not just the world's falsehoods, but their own. And when that happens, when you become the mirror they can't face, the separation deepens. You start to wonder if there's something wrong with you, when in truth, the only thing wrong is that you've begun to see too clearly in a world that survives on make-believe. And from here, the danger doesn't just turn outward, it turns inward. There's a point where the danger of seeing too much stops being social and starts becoming mental. When your awareness is constantly tuned to the hidden feelings around you, when you're always soaking up what's hidden, unspoken, unresolved, something begins to slowly break down inside. You start to lose track of what actually belongs to you. You might walk into a room feeling grounded and leave carrying a heaviness that isn't yours, a sadness that belonged to someone else, an anxiety that seeped into you like fog. It's unnoticed at first, almost hard to sense, until one day you realize you can't tell where you end and the world begins. It's like being a sponge in a flood. You soak up everything, and in doing so, you start to disappear. People who live like this often describe it in strangely similar ways. I feel like I'm dissolving. Like there's less of me and more of everyone else. It's not a metaphor. It's the real experience of having boundaries so leaky that you don't know what feelings are yours anymore. The gift of awareness becomes a curse of taking in everything. And yet, there's a strange redemption hiding inside this darkness. The real danger isn't that you see. It's that you see without knowing it. When you don't understand what's happening, when you think you're too sensitive or too emotional, when you blame yourself for feeling too much, that's when it hurts. But once you begin to recognize what's actually occurring, that your clarity isn't a flaw but a skill, everything changes. You stop taking the world's emotions personally. You realize that understanding others' feelings isn't meant to be an open wound. It's meant to be a window you can open and close. The difference between suffering and strength lies in awareness, knowing that you're not required to fix what you notice. You don't have to heal everyone's pain, expose every lie, or correct every problem you see. The strong need to step in, that's what drains you. You become the desperate person trying too hard, trying to clear a muddy river with your hands, stirring the water in the process, exhausting yourself in the name of clarity. True wisdom is knowing when to let the river settle on its own. And here lies the strange truth, the evolution of clear seeing into conscious seeing. When you finally stop trying to fix everything, your awareness reveals, something softens. You stop demanding that others wake up on your schedule. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. Strangely, this letting go doesn't dull your awareness. It sharpens it. You become lighter, freer, and strangely, people begin to feel safer around you. Because now, your seeing isn't an act of stepping over lines. It's an act of presence. You no longer use awareness as a weapon. You offer it as a gift. You can look at someone, see their struggle, their pretenses, their hidden pain, and simply hold space for it, without judgment, without strong need to act now. That kind of seeing feels like freedom. It gives others permission to be exactly as they are, without the pressure to perform or pretend. And in that space of gentle honesty, change happens naturally, without force. Because when seeing becomes presence, awareness becomes peace. To live with clear seeing, truly live with it, is to learn the art of standing back but still caring. Those who thrive with this ability understand something essential, that being awake doesn't mean being used up. They learn to stay grounded within themselves, even as they notice the storms swirling in others. They stop mistaking awareness for responsibility. They can stand in the middle of chaos and remain calm because they've realized that concern for others doesn't require getting mixed up. You can care deeply without carrying everything. You can understand profoundly without stepping in. You can feel fully without drowning. This kind of clarity doesn't separate. It frees you. It allows you to move through the world like calm water, like a mirror, but not bothered by every small wave passing over the surface. And to reach that state, being alone becomes your teacher. Not just physical being alone, but inner quiet, time away from the noise of other people's energies and expectations, time to remember what your own emotional signature feels like. In that stillness, the muddy water clears. You begin to recognize which feelings are yours and which ones you've merely borrowed. That's how the self returns, not through effort, but through silence. There's a certain deep pain that comes from noticing the truth of reality's hidden parts, not the kind of awakening people make it sound better than it is, but the quiet, almost sad one that changes the way you experience everything. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins with small, confusing moments. A friend's laugh that feels a little too empty. A compliment that carries the small hint of jealousy. A conversation that feels practiced rather than real. At first, you think you're imagining it. You try to go back to sleep, to the comforting simplicity of taking things as they seem. But once that small layer of make-believe rips, it can't be fixed. You begin to see through everything. The reasons beneath kind gestures, the fears behind pride, the insecurity wrapped in control. Life turns clear. Every interaction reveals a pattern, every word a hidden meaning, every silence a story. It's beautiful in its sharpness, but painful in its result, because the clearer you see, the less you can pretend. And pretending is what keeps most people comfortable. That's the first shock of clear seeing, the realization that truth, though bright, is also very isolated. You start longing for conversations that don't turn into shallow conversation. You want for spaces where words are unnecessary because being truly present is enough. But those spaces are rare. So you pull back, not out of pride or being uncaring, but out of quiet self-care. You begin to understand why monks seek quiet, why spiritual seekers go to quiet places, not because they hate the world, but because the never-ending sound of fakery wears them down. Yet, within that quiet space, something unexpected begins to form. Not anger, but clarity. You start to see that awareness isn't meant to separate, it's meant to sharpen. It removes what's false, yes, but only so that what's real can be seen, felt, lived. And that's the strange truth. The very thing that once felt like a curse, this extreme feeling to what lies beneath, slowly reveals itself as the beginning of real peace. Not the peace of not knowing, but the peace of no longer needing to look away. The strange thing about seeing clearly is that it doesn't just change how you view others, it changes how you view yourself. You start to notice the tiny actions in your own thoughts, the ways of controlling you once used without realizing it to fit in, to be liked, to feel safe. You catch yourself smiling when you don't mean it, agreeing when you disagree, pretending you're fine when you're quietly falling apart inside. At first, it's unsettling, like being caught in the act by your own awareness. But slowly, a deeper honesty begins to grow. You stop performing for the world, and with that, something extraordinary happens. The endless effort to be understood begins to disappear. Because you realize no one can fully understand you if they're still living behind their own masks, and that's okay. Being understood becomes less important than being real. You start speaking less, but what you say carries more truth. You begin moving slower, but every movement feels on purpose. People might say you've changed, that you've become distant, unconnected, maybe even cold, but what they don't see is the quiet revolution happening inside you. The need for approval disappears like an old skin. You start measuring your life not by how much you're loved, but by how much peace you feel when you're alone. It's not an easy change. In fact, it can feel like losing parts of yourself you thought were key. But it's really just the taking off old parts that were never truly you. The clearer your seeing becomes, the more you realize that most of what you called yourself was just a collection of borrowed emotions and learned habits. When they fall away, you're left with something quieter, simpler, a kind of still center. And from that stillness, a new kind of strength begins to grow. Not the loud, aggressive kind the world celebrates, but a strength born of internal balance. You stop trying to control what you notice, and instead, you start allowing it. You stop fighting the truth, and you start flowing with it. This is the small change in direction, when seeing no longer feels like a burden, but a form of ease. There comes a point when awareness deepens so much that it begins to feel like standing at the edge of two worlds, the visible one, where everything has form and story, and the unseen one, where all of those stories disappear. You find yourself floating between them, no longer able to fully belong to either. The visible world keeps calling you back with its noise, its warmth, its laughter. But something in you can't unsee the hidden ways. Things operate behind it all. The fear that drives goals. The pain behind control. The craving for love disguised as independence. And yet, the invisible world, with all its stillness and clarity, can start to feel too quiet, too separate, too empty. That's the strange truth of awakening. You learn to live in a space where both truths exist together, and neither can be denied. You begin to realize that seeing deeply isn't meant to make you reject the world. It's meant to teach you how to love it without make-believe. The tenderness of this realization is intense. You start seeing even pain as part of the planned movement, not something to fix, but something to understand. You notice that everyone, in their own way, is doing the best they can with the level of awareness they have. The man who lies does so out of fear. The woman who finds fault with is secretly hiding her own bad feelings. The one who pulls back just wants safety. And when you see this, really see it, less finding fault starts to disappear. Not because you support the damage people cause, but because you understand its roots. Concern for others stops being a good trait and becomes automatic. But concern for others doesn't mean staying open to everything. It means choosing carefully what you let in. You begin to realize that understanding others' pain without limits is hurting yourself. So you build invisible walls, not of defense, but of wisdom. You learn to see without taking it in, to love without losing yourself. That's when awareness finally grows up, when it stops being a flood that drowns you and becomes a river that carries you, steady and sure, through the ever-changing landscape of being. To live with clear seeing, truly live with it, is to learn the art of standing back but still caring. Those who do well with this skill understand something key, that being awake doesn't mean being used up. They learn to stay grounded within themselves, even as they notice the storm swirling in others. They stop mistaking awareness for responsibility. They can stand in the middle of chaos and remain calm because they've realized that pity doesn't require getting mixed up. You can care deeply without carrying everything. You can understand greatly without stepping in. You can feel fully without being overwhelmed. This kind of clarity doesn't separate. It frees you. It allows you to move through the world like calm water, like a mirror, but not bothered by every small wave passing over the surface. And to reach that state, being alone becomes your teacher. Not just physical quiet, but inner quiet. Time away from the noise of other people's energies and expectations. Time to remember what your own emotional signature feels like. In that stillness, the muddy water clears. You begin to recognize which feelings are yours and which ones you've merely borrowed. That's how the self returns, not through effort, but through silence. And so, we arrive at the strange truth that holds it all together. The danger of seeing what others don't is real. It can separate you, exhaust you, make you question your sanity, even dissolve your sense of self. But the same awareness, when carried with wisdom, becomes the very thing that saves you. The difference lies in how you hold it. If you use it to separate, it becomes a weapon. If you use it to control, it becomes a curse. But if you hold it gently, without judgment, without demand, it becomes light. And perhaps most beautifully, that light attracts others like you. People who see as deeply, feel as profoundly, and understand the cost of being awake. When you find them, something extraordinary happens. You realize you were never alone. Together, you hold a quiet kind of power, not the power to force awakening, but the power to stay awake with grace in a world still dreaming. That is the art of living with eyes open, to see clearly, love deeply, and remain whole. If these words resonated with you, if you've ever felt the ache of seeing too much in a world that asks you to look away, then this space is for you. Subscribe, stay connected, and share this with someone who understands what it means to be awake in a sleeping world. Because clarity, when shared gently, becomes understanding, not just for you, but for everyone brave enough to keep their eyes open.